A medieval peasant woke before dawn. The sun hadn't risen yet, but his day had already begun. He ate a bowl of thick grain porridge, cooked slowly over embers from the night before, maybe some salted fish on the side, a chunk of hard cheese if he was lucky. Then he walked out into the cold morning air and worked, back-breaking, relentless physical labour, for 12 hours straight. No protein shakes waiting for him after his labour, no recovery supplements to reduce inflammation, no fitness tracker on his wrist telling him he needed more steps, no app calculating whether he hit his macro targets for the day. Yet archaeological records show something deeply disturbing when we compare his body to yours. His bones were denser than yours, significantly denser. His teeth were stronger than yours, with less decay despite having no toothbrush, no fluoride treatments, no dental care whatsoever. His joints lasted longer than yours. His connective tissue held together under stress that would send you to a physical therapist within weeks. And you, with your organic groceries, your carefully planned meals, your expensive multivitamins lined up on the kitchen counter, your protein powder collection, are quietly falling apart from the inside. Your back hurts, your energy crashes by mid-afternoon. Your digestion is unpredictable at best. This isn't about willpower. It's not about discipline. The reason has almost nothing to do with calories, and everything to do with something we removed from food without realizing what we were losing. Here's what you've been taught about food your entire life. Calories in, calories out. That's the fundamental equation. Hit your protein target. Balance your macros across proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Fill the nutritional gaps with supplements. Drink your vitamins. Take your fish oil. It sounds scientific. It feels optimized. And for the last 60 years, this framework has dominated how we think about eating. It's taught in schools. It's promoted by governments. It's the foundation of every diet app and every fitness influencer's content strategy. We count grams obsessively. We track micronutrients down to the milligram. We buy fortified cereals that promise complete nutrition in every bowl. We treat food like data entry. Input the numbers, get the output. And look, this approach isn't stupid, it has genuine merits. It's helped elite athletes optimize performance. It's helped people lose significant amounts of weight. It comes from genuine research conducted by people who wanted to understand how food affects the human body. But here's the problem no one wants to talk about. Despite all this knowledge, more nutritional information than any generation in human history has ever possessed, we are sicker than ever. Chronic inflammation has become so common, we treat it as normal. Autoimmune conditions are skyrocketing in ways researchers can't fully explain. Brittle bones in people who religiously take their calcium supplements, digestive disasters in people who eat clean, metabolic dysfunction in people who follow every guideline perfectly. The system isn't broken because it's wrong. It's broken because it's incomplete. Something critical has been removed from the equation. And medieval peasants, people we assume were malnourished and desperate, accidentally had it figured out. Let me show you what they knew that we've forgotten. First, let's kill the myth of the starving medieval peasant. Yes, famines happened. Yes, poverty was brutal. But the average person in medieval Europe ate more consistently than Hollywood wants you to believe. Their diet was simple, repetitive, boring by modern standards. But boring is not the same as broken. In fact, boring might have been the entire point. Here's what they actually consumed on a daily basis. Grains formed the foundation of nearly every meal, but not the grains you know. We're talking about barley, rye, and oats, made into dense porridge or rough, heavy bread. Not the fluffy white bread you buy in plastic bags. This bread was coarse, thick, and loaded with fibre because nothing had been removed. It contained minerals from stone-ground milling. The grains themselves pulled nutrients from soil that hadn't been depleted by industrial agriculture. Legumes appeared constantly. Peas, lentils, broad beans, cheap protein sources that poor people could actually afford. But they served another purpose. Legumes fix nitrogen in soil, so growing them fed the earth for the next season's crops. Vegetables grew in kitchen gardens, attached to nearly every dwelling. Cabbage was king, hardy, storable, reliable. Onions and leeks added flavour to everything. Turnips and parsnips served as filling carbohydrate sources during cold months. These vegetables weren't perfect specimens selected for appearance. They were irregular, sometimes tough, often bitter, but they were dense with nutrients from healthy, unsprayed soil. Dairy appeared in forms we barely recognise today. Not pasteurised milk in plastic jugs. We're talking aged cheese fermented for months, cultured butter made from cream, allowed to sour slightly, clabbered milk, teeming with beneficial bacteria that colonised the gut and supported digestion. Meat was less common for peasants, but here's the critical difference. When medieval people ate meat, they ate all of it. Every single part of the animal was consumed. Organs went into dishes we would reject today. Liver, kidney, heart, tongue. Bones were cracked for marrow or simmered for hours to make broth. Skin was eaten or rendered for fat. Cartilage and connective tissue went into stews, becoming soft and gelatinous after long cooking. Nothing was wasted because nothing could be wasted. And then there was the method of preparation. Food wasn't microwaved in 3 minutes. It wasn't flash-fried in vegetable oil. It simmered. For hours, sometimes days, a pot hung over the fire constantly in many medieval homes. Bones, vegetables, scraps of meat, herbs, everything went in. The liquid reduced and concentrated. These slow-cooked meals extracted nutrients that modern cooking ignores entirely. Collagen from bones dissolved into the liquid. Glycine and proline, amino acids critical for joint health and gut lining, released from cartilage over hours of gentle heat. Minerals pulled directly from bones into the broth. Now here's what medieval people didn't have. No refined sugar, no seed oils, no preservatives designed in laboratories, no emulsifiers, no artificial colours, no flavour enhancers engineered to override your brain's satiety signals. Nothing with an ingredient list you can't pronounce. Their food was whole. It was local by necessity. It was seasonal by force. And whether they knew it or not, this pattern created something remarkable inside their bodies. Something we've almost completely lost. But first, you need to understand why their bodies adapted instead of breaking down. Here's the part that should genuinely bother you. We assume medieval people were weaker than us. Frailer, shorter, less healthy overall. We picture them as broken down, disease-ridden humans struggling through miserable lives. And yes, average height was somewhat lower during medieval periods. But that wasn't primarily about diet. It was about childhood diseases that stunted growth. Occasional periods of genuine food scarcity during failed harvests. Parasitic infections that stole nutrients during crucial developmental windows. But when researchers actually examine medieval skeletal remains, when they measure bone density, analyze tooth decay, study joint wear patterns, here's what they consistently find. Medieval bones were denser than modern bones, significantly denser in many cases. The trabecular structure, the internal lattice that gives bones their strength, was more robust and better organized. Their teeth showed remarkably less decay than we'd expect. Despite no toothpaste, no fluoride treatments, no dental care whatsoever, medieval teeth often survived better than modern teeth do, even with all our interventions. Joint surfaces showed wear from use. These were people who worked incredibly hard, but they showed less of the inflammatory damage we see constantly in modern populations. How is this possible? Because their diet didn't attack their bodies from the inside. Let's trace the path of what actually happens when you eat. When you consume food, it doesn't just become energy in some simple conversion process. Eating triggers a complex cascade of biological events. Digestion begins in your mouth and continues through your entire gut. Hormones respond to what you've eaten. Nutrients get absorbed, or they don't, depending on numerous factors. Inflammation signals either rise or fall based on what you've consumed, and the type of food you eat determines what kind of cascade you get. Modern ultra-processed food, the food that makes up the majority of calories consumed, in developed nations today, creates spikes, blood sugar rockets upward rapidly after eating, insulin floods in to manage the spike, inflammation markers rise in response to the metabolic stress. Then everything crashes, leaving you hungry, foggy, irritable, and craving more of the same foods that caused the problem. Your body interprets this roller coaster as stress, physiological stress, the kind of stress that triggers cortisol release, disrupts sleep quality, promotes fat storage around your organs, and degrades tissue over time. Day after day, year after year, decade after decade, that stress accumulates silently. Now compare this to medieval eating patterns, slow digesting grains that released glucose gradually over hours rather than minutes, high fiber content that fed beneficial gut bacteria and dramatically slowed absorption, fermented foods full of probiotics that strengthened the gut lining and supported immune function, fats that came from animals grazing on grass, not from factories processing seeds at high temperatures. Their blood sugar stayed stable throughout the day. No dramatic spikes, no crashes, no desperate hunger signals driving them to eat more than they needed. Their gut bacteria thrived on fiber and fermented foods, creating a microbiome that supported rather than sabotaged their health. Their hormones weren't constantly hijacked by food specifically designed to override satiety signals and make them eat past the point of fullness. There's more. The collagen from slow-cooked bones didn't just add richness and body to their stews. It provided the raw materials for maintaining joint integrity, supporting gut lining repair, and preserving skin elasticity throughout life. Modern diets are catastrophically deficient in collagen because we only eat muscle meat and throw away everything else. The minerals in their unrefined grains, magnesium, zinc, selenium, manganese, weren't stripped out during industrial processing. They remained in the food because no one had figured out how to remove them yet. The organ meats they consumed regularly were nature's original multivitamin. Liver alone contains more bioavailable vitamin A, B12, iron, and copper than any pill you'll find on a pharmacy shelf. And unlike pills, these nutrients came wrapped in cofactors and complementary compounds that helped the body actually use them effectively. And because their diet wasn't optimized by food scientists to taste explosively, addictively, irresistibly good, medieval people didn't overeat. Their food was satisfying, it was nourishing, it was filling, but it wasn't addictive. This distinction matters far more than you probably think. Because here's the hidden cost of modern flavor engineering that nobody discusses openly. Food today is designed intentionally, systematically, with millions of dollars in research to hijack your brain's reward system, to create precise combinations of salt, sugar, and fat that trigger dopamine responses beyond anything found in nature, to make you eat past fullness without realizing it, to make moderation feel like deprivation, to make stopping feel like losing something important. Medieval peasants never faced that problem. They ate until they were nourished, then they stopped. Not because they had superhuman willpower, not because they were morally superior or more disciplined, because their food didn't fight against them. The food worked with their biology instead of exploiting it. Now we reach the turning point of everything I'm telling you today, the part that most nutrition content will never explain because it challenges fundamental assumptions about progress and improvement. Medieval diets weren't optimized for performance. They weren't designed for maximum muscle gain, optimal fat loss, or impressive longevity metrics. Nobody was trying to maximize anything. Nobody was tracking anything. They were optimized for one thing only: survival. And survival, real survival, the kind where failure means death, requires something modern. Diets have completely abandoned resilience, the ability to endure hardship without breaking down, to recover from illness without expensive interventions, to function adequately without supplementation, to keep going when conditions aren't perfect, because conditions were almost never perfect. Think about what medieval life actually demanded from the human body. Cold winters with no central heating, just fire, wool, and whatever fat reserves you'd accumulated during better months. Manual labour from dawn to dusk with no recovery protocols, no foam rolling, no massage therapy, no anti-inflammatory medications to mask the pain. Illness with no antibiotics, no antivirals, no emergency rooms. Your immune system either handled the threat or it didn't. Injuries that had to heal on their own, with no surgical intervention, no physical therapy, no advanced imaging to diagnose exactly what was wrong. If your body couldn't handle stress on its own, you died. Natural selection was still operating at full force on human populations, so their food had to build systems that worked under pressure, not systems that worked perfectly in perfect conditions, systems that worked adequately in terrible conditions, systems that could take a hit and keep functioning. Now compare that to modern optimization culture. We don't eat for resilience, we eat for performance windows. We time protein intake precisely around workouts for maximum muscle protein synthesis. We manipulate carbohydrate timing for optimal energy peaks exactly when we think we need them. We use pre-workout supplements for extra intensity. We use post-workout supplements for faster recovery. We use sleep supplements to offset the stimulants we took earlier. We chase marginal gains in metrics that ultimately don't matter outside controlled conditions. And when real stress hits, not gym stress, but actual life stress, our carefully optimized bodies collapse. 1 week of sleep, and your digestion falls apart completely. You're bloated, uncomfortable, irregular. 1 stressful month at work, and your immune system cracks. You catch every cold and virus that passes through the office. 1 unexpected injury, and recovery takes 3 times longer than expected, despite following every protocol perfectly. This isn't weakness of character. This isn't personal failure. This isn't something wrong with you specifically. It's the predictable consequence of building a body optimized for precision instead of durability. Medieval diets didn't create impressive athletes with visible abs and measurable performance metrics. They created survivors, and survivors don't need perfect conditions to function. That's literally what makes them survivors. That's the forgotten advantage we traded away without ever realizing its value. We optimized for the wrong thing entirely. Let's talk specifically about what went wrong in the modern approach to food. Modern nutrition made 3 critical errors that compound on each other devastatingly. The first error: we separated food from environment. Medieval eating was embedded in natural cycles. Seasons dictated what was available. Weather determined what grew. Harvest rhythms controlled when abundance came and when scarcity followed. You ate what grew in your region, when it grew, where it grew. There was no other option. This meant your body constantly adapted to shifting inputs. Different nutrients became available at different times of year, different caloric density across seasons. The metabolism stayed flexible, responsive, adaptable to change. Now we've obliterated that connection entirely. We eat the same foods year-round regardless of season. Strawberries in December, tomatoes in February, asparagus whenever we want it, shipped from the opposite hemisphere at enormous environmental cost. This sounds like progress. This sounds like we've conquered nature's limitations, but it trained our bodies to expect sameness, constant, unchanging sameness. And in doing so, we lost the metabolic flexibility that comes from regular adaptation. Your body no longer knows how to handle variation because it never experiences meaningful variation anymore. The second error: we replaced food with numbers. Medieval people didn't count anything. They couldn't have if they wanted to. They had no concept of calories, no knowledge of macronutrients, no way to measure micronutrient content. They just ate food. But we've reduced eating to data points. Everything becomes a number to track and optimize. Calories consumed, protein grams, carbohydrate ratios, micronutrient percentages, RDA fulfillment calculations. The problem is profound. Numbers don't capture everything that matters. Numbers can't measure how a food is processed, what was stripped out during manufacturing, what chemical changes occurred during high-heat industrial treatment. Numbers can't capture the synergies that exist between nutrients in whole foods, synergies that disappear completely when you isolate individual components. A gram of protein from slow-cooked bone broth is not the same as a gram of protein from a powder mixed into water. The number is identical. The effect on your body is completely different. The third error, we treat symptoms, not systems. Low iron levels, take an iron supplement, bad digestion, pop an enzyme pill before meals, weak bones, add a calcium supplement to your daily routine. Joint pain, take glucosamine and chondroitin. Low energy, try B vitamin injections. This is intervention medicine applied to food. Identify the specific symptom, target it directly with an isolated compound, ignore everything else. And it completely misses the bigger picture. Medieval diets built integrated systems that didn't need intervention. Everything worked together synergistically. The gut supported nutrient absorption, which supported bone building, which supported joint function, which supported the ability to do physical work, which supported appetite regulation, which supported gut health. The food itself was the medicine, not as a marketing slogan, but as a biological reality. Let me give you concrete examples of how this plays out practically. Modern bread is stripped of virtually everything valuable during industrial milling. The bran, the germ, the oils, the vitamins, the minerals, all removed to create white flour that stores longer and tastes milder. Then synthetic vitamins are sprayed back onto the flour to fortify it. We literally remove nature's nutrition, then try to add artificial versions back in and call it equivalent. Medieval bread was stone ground, whole grain, and naturally mineralized from the soil it grew in. Nobody removed anything. The nutrition was inherent, not artificially added. One is a workaround attempting to compensate for damage we chose to inflict. The other is actual food as it existed for thousands of years. Modern protein comes increasingly in powder form, whey isolated from dairy through industrial processing, fast absorbing, convenient, marketed aggressively for muscle building. Medieval protein came embedded in complete animal tissue, collagen, fat, connective tissue, minerals all present together naturally. It supported joints, gut lining, satiety, and muscle in an integrated way. One is isolated and incomplete. The other is whole and synergistic. Modern multivitamins contain nutrients extracted through various industrial processes from sources your body often barely recognizes. Synthetic forms of vitamins that may or may not absorb properly. Minerals in forms that may or may not be bioavailable. Medieval diets contained the same nutrients, wrapped in the whole foods your body spent millions of years evolving to digest and utilize efficiently. One is an attempted shortcut, the other is an actual relationship between human biology and food. We didn't upgrade nutrition, we dismantled it piece by piece, then tried desperately to reassemble the pieces in a laboratory. And now we're living with the consequences in our bones, our guts, our energy levels, our chronic disease statistics. All right, enough contrast between what went wrong and what used to work. Let's talk about what you can actually do with this information starting today. I'm not going to give you a detailed meal plan. I'm not going to tell you to literally eat like a medieval peasant. You don't have access to their foods. You don't live their life. Direct replication isn't the point and isn't possible anyway. But I will give you principles, guiding frameworks, rules your body already understands at a deep biological level. even if your conscious mind has forgotten them. Eat fewer ingredients, not fewer calories. A meal with 5 whole ingredients that you can identify and name will almost always outperform a meal with 50 processed ingredients engineered in a factory. Complexity in food science is not the same as nutritional value. Often it's the opposite. Simplify what you eat radically. Count ingredients, not calories. Prefer slow foods over fast foods. This isn't just about avoiding drive-thrus and fast food restaurants. It's about cooking method fundamentally. Food that's simmered for hours, stewed until tender, or braised slowly extracts more nutrition than food that's fried rapidly or microwaved in minutes. The time is literally an ingredient in the cooking process. It transforms food chemically. Give your cooking the time it needs. Value digestion over macros. It doesn't matter what you eat if your gut can't actually absorb it properly. You could eat perfectly calculated macros every single day and still be malnourished if your digestive system is compromised. Prioritize fermented foods that support gut bacteria. Give your meals space and time. Don't eat while stressed, rushed, or distracted by screens. Digestion is where nutrition actually happens, not on your plate, but in your gut. Cook for extraction, not just convenience. Use bones in your cooking regularly. Make stocks and broths as a foundation for other meals. Let things simmer until the collagen has released fully into the liquid. You're not just cooking food, you're unlocking nutrients that are literally trapped inside bones and connective tissue and making them available. Modern cooking optimizes entirely for speed. Medieval cooking optimized for nourishment. There's profound wisdom in slowness. Eat the whole animal, or reconsider whether it's worth eating animal products at all. If you're only eating muscle meat, chicken breast, lean beef, boneless, skinless everything, you're getting a small fraction of what animals actually offer nutritionally. Organs, bones, and connective tissue contain nutrients modern diets are desperately lacking. Collagen and glycine for joints and gut lining. Fat-soluble vitamins in concentration supplements can't match. This isn't weird or extreme. It's exactly what your great-grandparents did routinely, without thinking about it. Rotate what you eat with the seasons and over time. Stop eating the same 5 meals every single week for years on end. Seasonal variation forces your metabolism to adapt and stay flexible. It also prevents the kind of low-grade food sensitivities that develop insidiously when you eat the exact same things constantly without any variation. Stop treating food like fuel and start treating it like information. This is perhaps the biggest mindset shift of all. Food isn't just energy measured in calories, it's information being sent to every system in your body simultaneously. Every meal sends signals to your gut bacteria, to your hormones, to your brain chemistry, to your immune system, to your gene expression. You're not just filling a tank with gasoline. You're programming a complex biological system with detailed instructions. What instructions are you sending with your food choices? These principles aren't complicated or difficult to understand, but they require you to think about food fundamentally differently than modern culture encourages. Less optimization, more alignment with how your body actually evolved to work, less control and measurement, more trust in whole foods and traditional preparation methods. Your body already knows how to use real food. It's been learning for millions of years of evolution. The question is whether you're actually giving it real food to work with, or industrial approximations that look like food, but don't function the same way biologically. Here's where I want to leave you with this. We tend to believe automatically that progress means improvement, that modern is inherently better than old, that science always moves forward in ways that benefit everyone. But progress in food has mostly meant one thing when you examine it honestly: convenience. And convenience is not the same as nourishment, not even close. Every shortcut we've taken in the food system, faster processing, longer shelf lives, cheaper ingredients, more consistent products, easier preparation, lower costs, has come with a hidden price tag. Not a cost you see immediately, not a cost that shows up on a receipt or a nutrition label, a cost that accumulates silently over decades. In your bone density declining faster than it should, in your gut microbiome becoming less diverse and less functional, in your energy becoming unpredictable and unreliable, in your ability to recover from stress diminishing year after year, in your baseline resilience eroding so gradually you don't notice until it's severely compromised. Medieval people didn't have our knowledge. They didn't have our technology. They didn't have our scientific understanding of biochemistry and nutrition. But they had something we've lost, a relationship with food that was rooted in survival rather than optimization, rooted in natural cycles rather than artificial consistency, rooted in trusting the body's ancient wisdom rather than trying to override it with calculations and interventions. I'm not asking you to go backward. I'm not romanticizing a brutal past. I'm not suggesting we abandon modern knowledge entirely. But I am asking you to question the story we've all been told about food and progress. To look honestly at the results we're actually getting from our superior modern approach. To consider whether optimization culture might be optimizing for the wrong outcomes entirely. Because if people survived genuinely harsher lives with dramatically simpler food and no scientific knowledge whatsoever, if their bones were denser and their teeth were stronger and their bodies more resilient than ours, what exactly are we missing? What did we trade away without realizing its true value? And is it possible to get some of it back before the cost becomes too high? In the next video, we're going deeper into this territory. Because medieval food wasn't just about eating, it was medicine. The line between the kitchen and the pharmacy simply didn't exist for most of human history. Forgotten remedies that actually worked. Peasant cures passed down through generations. Herbal knowledge accumulated over centuries that modern science is only now beginning to rediscover and validate through clinical research. If you want to understand how food became separated from pharmacy and why that separation may be costing us more than we realize, that story is coming next.